Religion is one of the oldest institutions in human history. Older than writing, older than agriculture, and possibly even older than language as we know it. From remote hunter-gatherer societies to sprawling empires and modern nation-states, religion has shaped how people live, die, and understand the world around them. But what exactly is religion? Is it belief in gods, a moral code, a set of rituals, or something deeper, a framework for making sense of existence itself? This is Unforgotten, and this is Religion Explained in 13 Minutes. Early humans lived in a world without certainty. Storms came without warning. Illness struck without cause. A successful hunt could mean life, a failed one, death. In the absence of science or written knowledge, people turned to something else to explain the unknown: belief. One of the earliest forms of religious thought is known as animism, the idea that nature is alive with spirits. Trees, rivers, rocks, animals, even the wind were thought to have consciousness or agency. These spirits could help or harm, and so they needed to be respected, placated, or honoured through ritual. This wasn't superstition in the modern sense. It was a practical attempt to understand and influence a mysterious world. We see clues of early religious behaviour in prehistoric burial practices. As far back as 100,000 years ago, Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens were burying their dead with care, sometimes placing tools, ornaments, or food beside the body. These weren't random acts. They suggest a belief that the dead continued to exist in some way, and that the living had a responsibility toward them. Over time, these beliefs evolved into myths, stories passed orally from one generation to the next. Myths explained where the sun went at night, why winter returned each year, or what caused lightning to strike. They weren't just stories, they were early attempts at explanation. In a world governed by forces beyond human control, myth offered a kind of order. It helped people make sense of suffering, celebrate survival, and prepare for death. In this earliest phase, religion wasn't a system of doctrine or dogma. It was a way of living with nature, with death, and with mystery. One that would evolve dramatically in the millennia to come. As human communities grew from small bands of hunter-gatherers into settled agricultural societies, their beliefs grew with them. With permanent settlements came new challenges: managing food, resolving conflict, and keeping order among larger, more complex groups. Religion evolved to meet those needs. In early civilizations like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, belief systems became more structured. Polytheism, the belief in many gods, flourished. These gods were often tied to natural forces or key aspects of life: a sun god to explain the day, a storm god for the weather, a harvest goddess for crops, or a war god for protection. In many cities, a patron deity emerged, a god who watched over that particular place, giving religion a local and political dimension. Religion also became a foundation for law and morality. In ancient Mesopotamia, laws were said to come from the gods, as in the famous Code of Hammurabi, which was presented as a gift from the god Marduk. The divine was used to legitimize authority, reinforce moral behavior, and establish rules for justice and order. Temples became the spiritual and economic centers of society. Priests acted as intermediaries between the gods and the people, controlling not just worship, but often land, trade, and education. In some cultures, kings claimed divine right, or even claimed to be gods themselves. The Egyptian pharaoh was considered the living embodiment of Horus. The Sumerian kings were chosen by the gods, and later Roman emperors would be deified after death. Religion was no longer just about understanding the world. It had become deeply entangled with power, law, and society itself, For much of early human history, religion was passed down through oral tradition. Stories told by elders, memorized by priests, and preserved through ritual. But as writing developed, beliefs were recorded in lasting form. Some of the world's oldest surviving religious texts include the Vedas of ancient India, the Torah of the Hebrew Bible, the Bible of early Christianity, and the Quran in the Islamic tradition. These texts didn't just preserve myths and laws, they became the foundation for entire religious worldviews. This period also saw the rise of religions with universal appeal, faiths that weren't tied to a single city or tribe, but claimed to offer truth to all of humanity. Hinduism, rooted in the Vedic tradition, developed a rich spiritual framework involving dharma, karma, and rebirth. Buddhism, emerging from the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, offered a path to liberation from suffering that could be followed by anyone, regardless of caste or background. Christianity and Islam both grew from earlier monotheistic traditions, offering messages of salvation, divine guidance, and a relationship with a single, all-powerful God. As these religions spread, they shifted the focus from local gods to moral codes and salvation narratives. The divine was no longer just a force behind storms or harvests. It became the source of justice, mercy, and ultimate truth. Human life was framed as a journey with consequences. Heaven or hell, rebirth or liberation, sin or salvation. Their growth was accelerated by missionaries, empires, and trade routes. Buddhist monks travelled the Silk Road. Christian apostles spread their message across the Roman Empire. Muslim traders and scholars brought Islam from Arabia to North Africa, Central Asia, and beyond. These religions crossed borders and cultures, creating communities of belief that spanned continents. As religions grew and spread, they didn't just shape beliefs, they shaped identity. Over time, religion became deeply tied to culture, language, and community. It influenced how people saw themselves, where they belonged, and how they related to others. Religious identity often expressed itself through rituals, festivals, clothing, and dietary rules. These practices weren't just spiritual, they were social. Fasting during Ramadan, wearing a turban or cross, keeping kosher or vegetarian, all became visible markers of belonging. They created a shared sense of time, tradition, and purpose. For many, being part of a religion wasn't just about belief, it was about being part of a people. But identity can unite and divide. Religion gave people solidarity, especially in times of hardship or displacement. It preserved languages, sustained traditions, and offered a moral compass. Yet when faith and politics overlapped, as they often did, it also became a source of conflict. Religious differences have been used to justify wars, conquests, discrimination, and exclusion. From the Crusades to colonial conversions to modern sectarian violence, the line between faith and power has often been dangerously thin. Still, for billions of people today, religion remains a central part of who they are, not just what they believe. Religion is not fixed. While traditions may seem timeless, history shows that no religion stays exactly the same. As societies evolve, so do their beliefs, through reinterpretation, reformation, and sometimes outright schism. In Christianity, the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century challenged the authority of the Catholic Church. Figures like Martin Luther called for a return to scripture and personal faith, sparking a wave of religious transformation that reshaped Europe. In Islam, divisions over leadership and theology gave rise to Sunni and Shia branches, each with its own traditions and interpretations. Buddhism developed into multiple schools, Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, each offering different paths toward enlightenment. In Hinduism, reform movements emerged in response to colonialism, modernity and internal critique, rethinking caste, ritual, and the role of scripture. These changes weren't always peaceful. Schisms could lead to persecution, exile, or war, but they also showed religion's capacity to adapt, to respond to new contexts, questions, and challenges. Whether it was scientific discovery, political upheaval, or changing social values, faiths have found ways to evolve while still holding on to their core. Religion is shaped by the world just as much as it seeks to shape it. The rise of the Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries brought dramatic changes to how people thought about the world. Scientific discoveries challenged traditional religious explanations. Theories of evolution, cosmology, and human psychology began to offer answers without invoking the divine. Alongside this came the rise of secularism, the idea that religion should be separate from government and public life, and a growing skepticism of religious authority. Many predicted that religion would fade in the face of reason and progress. But that hasn't happened. Instead, religion has persisted, though often in new forms. In some places, it became more personal, less about institutional authority and more about individual belief or practice. In others, it became more politicized, tied to identity, nationalism, or resistance to change. A growing number of people now identify as spiritual but not religious, drawn to meditation, mysticism, or moral frameworks without formal affiliation. New Age movements, neo-paganism, and hybrid belief systems have emerged, mixing ancient traditions with modern values. At the same time, global interfaith dialogues have gained momentum, bringing different religions into conversation rather than competition. In an age of information, mobility, and pluralism, religion continues to evolve, not as a relic of the past, but as something people continue to seek, question, and reshape. Even in a world shaped by science and technology, religion continues to offer something powerful. For many, it provides answers to life's biggest questions: why we're here, what happens when we die, and how we should live. It gives people a sense of purpose, a framework for morality, and a place to belong. Yes, religion has been a source of conflict, but it has also inspired some of the world's greatest acts of compassion, resistance, and creativity, from movements for justice to works of art and architecture, to the quiet strength found in prayer and ritual. You don't have to believe to see the impact. Religion is woven into the fabric of human history, shaping cultures, laws, languages, and lives. Whether you approach it with faith, curiosity, or critique, understanding religion is essential to understanding humanity.